She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstine.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Mac Outdoors podcast with Mia Anstine, and that would be me. I'm excited to be visiting with you today. I have a very special guest. In the past, we've had a few of the conservation organizations and some that work with legislative prospects and aspects and stuff like that. And I'll include some of them in the show notes, but today I'm going to be visiting with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and specifically Mark Holyoak. And I'm super excited to share this because we're going to talk all things elk. Well, not all things because we would be here for days. And I will be having him back on a future episode because there are so many things that we could talk about. But we also will be talking about some special events that Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has coming up. We'll be talking about why you may want to go to some of their fundraisers. And we're going to talk about some of Mark's favorite outdoor passions, which I want you to contact the show. You can email us, contact@miaanstine.com, or you can just message us on social media, Mac Outdoors or Mia Anstine, either one. We'll always get back to you. But I want you to tell me about Mark's outdoor activities. And if you've tried it or if you want to, let me know what you think. Anyways, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the show. And we'll get started with just a couple of advertisements because these are ways to support the show because, it's just Mia and this does cost money to do. So thank you for listening and I appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoy this episode.
This summer, whether at the range or in the field, WSI Sports Hypertech bamboo tanks, tees, and leggings will have you covered. Visit WSISports.com to support the show and use the affiliate code MACO10 for 10% off your purchase. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. Again, that code is MACO10 for 10% off your order at WSISports.com.
Hey guys, are you looking for a stylish concealed carry shirt? Check out Tarn Cap Gear. With print-reducing patterns, concealed carry snaps, and minimal branding, Tarn Cap's cloak of invisibility is what you have been waiting for. Visit mia.limited/tarncap and use the code Anstine for 10% off your purchase. Again, that's mia.limited/tarncap and use code Anstine for 10% off your order. Hello, and I'm happy to have you, Mark. I'm excited to see you virtually because I missed you at SHOT Show this year. I'm sure you were there, but there were a lot of people around.
I was not there, actually.
Yeah, I missed you. Okay, no wonder I missed you.
I haven't been for a couple of years now, which doesn't really break my heart. I went so many years in a row, and I don't know, Vegas doesn't always do it for me. But it's always great to see a lot of people. But at the same time, it's fun to not have to turn around and fly there.
I understand. I contemplate every year whether I'm going to go or not, but it is, a time where I get a lot of work done and meet with editors and stuff like that. So it's productive, I suppose. But with the shutdowns in 2020, a lot of stuff is done virtually, just like we're doing right now. So, there is that too. But so I know who you are and I'm talking to you like I know you, but would you introduce yourself to my audience and let them know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mark Holyoak. I'm the Director of Communication at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I've been here almost 12 years. Prior to that, I had a 24-year run in broadcast journalism. So you turn on your TV and I would be one of the guys speaking during the news. I really enjoyed that. But I love working at RMEF. And one of the main reasons is just, I told you about my past because this is why. When you're in the media business, of course, it's really important for you to walk the fence, to maintain your objectivity. I've had people knock on my doors a lot of times over the years wanting to put campaign signs in my yard. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't, but now that I work for RMEF, I can advocate for an animal, for hunting, for conservation. I can have an open opinion. And for me, it's been night and day. And to work for RMEF, where our mission is to ensure the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage, is awesome. I mean, it's a great opportunity. We're involved in so many projects and so many things all around the country. We have some 500 chapters, thousands upon thousands of volunteers who host those banquet events and raise those funds we put back on the ground. It's just such a grand scale thing, and kind of a conservation movement, I would call it. And it's just so fun to be part of it and hear about little things and push that information back out to other people so they can learn about the great things that they're helping us accomplish.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I kind of started out just wanting to share is that movement, because it seems like I live in Western US. I mean, I live in Colorado, and it seems like elk are like the icons of the West. And for not just hunters, but for just wildlife enthusiasts, love to see elk. And I mean, I just mentioned there's a herd of elk running around in my pasture right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting to see elk. And Rocky Mountain Elk, I see a lot of people are members, a lot of people are supporters, and I'm a hunter, but do you guys also have members that are not hunters that just are elk enthusiasts?
Absolutely. That's key and core to our mission. I mean, when our mission to ensure the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat and our hunting heritage. And so we do so many projects that have beneficial impacts for moose and for mule deer and for wild turkey and rough grouse. And we're even involved in a lot of places where there's lakes and rivers and streams, and so fish as well. All the little critters that live in and around that riparian habitat. So by far, the majority of our membership, probably 97, 98%, 95%, definitely are hunters. But there's a lot who aren't. There's people here in the building at RMEF headquarters that don't hunt. They appreciate it. They understand its link for conservation, but they don't necessarily go out and hunt. Or if they do hunt, maybe they don't hunt elk. Maybe they're more bird hunters, that sort of thing. I know there's a group of folks down the hall that were at the shooting range shooting shotguns over the weekend. So, those that were there hunt elk, but there are others who don't. So we're not just a little single species, even though that's our focus. The trickle-down effects of so many other species are out there, ranging from not just animal life and not just fish, but also plants and trees, vegetation, forests, all those sorts of things. We do a lot of work that benefits all of that. And so we try to, even though people might push us into a corner of being strictly elk or strictly West Coast related, no, I mean, we're all across the country. We have membership all across the United States as well that supports what we do.
Yeah, and you mentioned the overlap of what you guys do, and what I see is you guys are a conservation organization. And here locally, I've seen some habitat and some restoration and development and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little about, there's a conservation easement. What kind of stuff are you doing with that? Because I know me as a rancher, being from the Cattlemen's Association, I also see work with Trout Unlimited and Rocky Mountain Elk. And can you tell us a little about those projects?
Yeah, there's just so many of those projects, period. We actually are holders of several hundred conservation easements across the nation. We refer to them as voluntary conservation agreements because we work with the landowners and they want to be involved with it. They would like to maintain the wildlife values of their land and keep it as is. And so there are stipulations in place that keep them from building lots of buildings on their land, that sort of thing. They kind of look after, and these agreements look after and maintain the habitat for these animals forever. It's not just them. They could sell the land, and that conservation easement goes on to the next landowner as well. So there's just every agreement is similar in a way, but they're also different. They're kind of catered to each individual landowner depending on where they are, where they live. Of course, we're involved in elk habitat, so that's where those easements go into place, is where there's elk, and again, which the trickle-down effects for other species as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously where there's elk, we need grass and water and things like that. Thinking of that here locally, I mean, I think in my little bubble where I live, but I know that it expands beyond that. There are areas where there's a push to do things for the green and the energy movement. And what we've got in one of our migration corridors, and I know Colorado Parks and Wildlife weighs in on this, but I wonder if Rocky Mountain Elk does. They're wanting to put an area of solar panels, and it's on a private property. Does Rocky Mountain Elk get involved in that or have a say in it at all? Or do you guys kind of just try to inform the public?
We do. It kind of depends on the specific circumstance on a particular landscape. We don't. So as a 501c3, as a nonprofit, what we can't do is we don't do electioneering. In other words, we don't back specific candidates. We're not going down that road. We won't do that. We don't want to jeopardize our status. But what we do is when there are issues that affect elk or elk habitat, we definitely jump in. We put in a comment recently for, I can't remember exactly the location because we do lots of comment letters and lots of public testimony, that sort of thing. But it was talking specifically about what you were talking about, the growth of a new type of energy, but they were putting it in such a place that is like a migration corridor. And there's, a corridor is generally narrow. It's not, expansive. Elk and other wildlife don't go over the tops of the mountains. They look for particular places to migrate to and from. And so, our comment there that we submitted was, hey, well, let's slow down a little bit. Let's look at the mapping here. Let's look at where the animals go. And let's see if we want to pursue or push this particular energy project, let's put it in a place that works, that allows these migration corridors to continue, which are historic, to continue to be working and functioning for the animals. So it does depend on the specific parameters of what's going on in those locations. But we have and we do, and we appreciate when we hear about things like this, so that we can be engaged. And at the same time, if it comes down to it, depending on what the issue is, that we can reach out to our members and have them be engaged as well.
Yeah. With your members, you talked about the members, and did you say there are chapters in the different areas?
We have 500-ish chapters around the whole country. You're in Colorado, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that happens to be the state where we have the most membership. People may not realize it, but number two, you'd think would be, Montana. It's actually Pennsylvania. So we have membership scattered all over the place, but we do have chapters in just about every state except for New Jersey and Hawaii. And they not only have banquets and raise funding, but we try to keep them in the loop about things that are going on in their backyard so that they can weigh in as well. I mean, as you know, in Colorado, there's big issues going on in your backyard as well. So we try and keep our membership in the loop there.
Yeah. And so those chapters, are they actively engaging in issues? I mean, you said you tried to inform them. I do know I sit on the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. I sit on that panel, and there's a Rocky Mountain Elk person who represents Rocky Mountain Elk on there. And then on the Sports Persons Roundtable, there's a Rocky Mountain Elk member. Is that part of as the chapters, or are these just individuals who are maybe chapter members that are trying to be active in the community?
Those would mostly be individuals. The main purpose of the chapters and all the committee members that are involved there is to plan to host banquets to raise funding that we can put back on the ground. But as we go through that process and as individual happenings pop up, then we do reach out to our chapter chairs, our state chairs, all those sorts of folks to let them know what's going on. And then through that process, we have people that contact us and say, I'd like to do more. And so we say, okay, what do you mean by that? Well, I'd like to, we've had some that have on their very own gone and testified before the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, for example, on their very own. We didn't ask them to, but we do have others that we say, hey, and they've said, when stuff comes up, let us know, and we let them know, and we will forward them comments and say, maybe you can go testify toward this legislative committee or before the commission and say A, B, C, D, and E, and let them know about our presence in your state, how much we do, how much we need to work together, and the concerns that we have. So it's kind of both ways, but what we find is that volunteers in general are amazing people. I mean, they're giving their own time. They're spending hours upon hours upon hours to host banquets. We also have volunteer projects, fence poles, plantings, building wildlife water guzzlers, all sorts of things that pop up periodically all over the place. And so our volunteers are amazing, and they do a lot for the mission.
Yeah, and thinking of that volunteering, before we started recording, we were talking about my daughter because she did an internship while she was at the University of Montana in Missoula, there where you guys are. And
yeah, she was right off my desk, in fact.
Yeah, and she used to do some of the reports for the Bugle magazine, which is just an amazing publication. I love that magazine. But in there, she would kind of summarize some of the projects that the chapters are doing. Are those projects, are you guys seeking those out and sending them to the chapters, or are the chapters interacting and coming up with the projects?
Some of both. Sometimes the volunteers just say, we're going to get together and do this thing. We're going to host a mentored hunt. We're going to do this. Other times we do in all of the states where elk are present, which I believe is 20, I think there's 28 elk states where they're wild and free ranging. We have committees that are put together that include an RMEF staffer, usually a member from like the Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management, volunteers, local universities. And so this funding that's raised at the banquets, so we have this pot of cash, what do we do with it? So these committees will get together in each individual state, and there will be different projects that will be submitted to them, like maybe we want to do a prescribed burn on this many hundreds of acres, or maybe forest is particularly, there's a lot of deadfall. What if we could go in and do thinning there? Or what if we could do some noxious weed treatments, those sorts of things. And so we will take that funding that comes from those individual states, and that this knowledgeable committee will then take the funding raised by the chapters, raised by the volunteers, and put it back on the ground. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how that works.
Again, going back to local, you guys, I think, provided near $1 million for a wildlife overpass in Southwest Colorado. And that just, I mean, it's phenomenal because it's another one of those migration corridors that we used to see an abundance of elk. And now there's not nearly as many because the population's declining. Looking at population declines, in Colorado, the southern half of the state, the elk population has been declining, and there's been an elk study going on for years down here. But are you seeing the populations decline in other areas as well? Or, I mean, is your guys' goal basically to have the habitat to support the elk, or do you want, what kind of populations do you guys want?
Those that are sustainable and thrive. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. But yeah, in Southwest Colorado, for sure, it's been a number of years now that populations are going down, and we've been involved in the research efforts there, because the more scientific on the ground research and data you can accumulate, watching dynamics, habitat usage patterns, how they move, migration corridors, those sorts of things. The more we know about that, the more we can help at the same time. So we're involved in a lot of different studies around the country that do exactly that. Generally speaking, we're talking, this is, high level. We're talking when RMEF was founded in 1984, there were 550,000 elk. Today there's 1.1 million. Obviously we're not saying we did that, but we have done a lot of habitat work that supports populations. But it is important that we keep an eye on and keep a good relationship with the various state agencies, because those are the folks that have the numbers, that have boots on the ground, the biologists, the game managers. And so we do work with them. We had a elk summit, if you want to call it that, earlier this year here at RMEF headquarters. We had representatives from a couple dozen different state wildlife agencies, and even clear up into the Yukon and Canada was represented as well, where folks that had elk showed up. They shared their latest information on trends, patterns, ongoing research that's about to be kicked off. And of course, we want to be part of that. We want to be someone or an organization that can make a difference in helping move those studies and move that work along. So we do keep a close relationship with all of those state agencies so that we can help monitor and check on the health of herds, and then work with hunters, hunting being the main tool for wildlife management, to keep those herds healthy and reproducing. And if they're not, then we need to find out why and then try to take action to turn things around.
Are the hunters pretty interactive with you guys and kind of feeding you information or giving you feedback? How are you seeing information from hunters?
I think some are, some aren't. I think, generally speaking, hunters, especially this time of year, as regulations start to pour out, they can't wait to get their fingers on them and then bury their nose deep in the regulations and check about how this quota has changed in this region and et cetera. But that's also something that's really important right now, that hunters, pick their noses up out of the regulations and look around and see what's going on. But they note that there are decreasing elk populations in southwest Colorado, for example, or particular challenges or new energy installations that are being proposed in migration corridors, those sorts of things. Where the public can be involved, the more they can be involved, the better, because things will happen whether or not we say anything. A lot of times, if we don't say anything or don't notice, they will definitely happen, and that's not necessarily a good thing, even though there's a lot of good things that do happen. So that's really important. At the same time, there are hunters that will bring things to the table that just come out of the blue that are so appreciated. Like shortly after I started here, there was over in central Montana, there's a region there that has a lot of huge private ranches. But back behind those ranches is this swath, this huge landscape of public land that's really hard to get to. And so there was a hunter who happened to be a member of RMEF, and he noticed that a little 40-acre piece of land, because he'd hunted there for years because he had permission from the landowner, where the landowner informed him, hey, I'm going to put this on the market and sell it. And so what the hunter did is he contacted us immediately and said, hey, I just got word, this is happening, and we knew exactly where it was, and we knew the lay of the land, and we were able to swoop in, buy it, and then basically convey it to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks with, I think we donated about $120,000, $140,000 in that deal. And so now people can drive down that public road, they can pull into a little parking lot on this 40-acre piece of land. They walk to the back corner, and I've walked to that corner in this land, and it has about 25 yards in common with public land behind it. So now they have access to 16,000 acres that if that would have been scooped up, they could have still gotten there, but they would have had to drive clear over here and hike 3 days in order to get there. So that's just one example of one hunter who stepped up, who noticed something, he said something, and now who benefits? Everybody does because of his action. So the more that hunters could be involved like that and just let us or the state agency or whoever know about things happening, the better off we'll be and the better off wildlife will be.
You mentioning that, I saw a press release this morning from, is it called Revivalist now, Vista Outdoors? They had a press conference with Sims and a couple of other of their organizations, and they're working on the Public Lands and Public Hands Act with your Representative Zinke and a few other legislators. And are you guys involved in that, or have you been keeping an eye on that?
Yeah, news release, at least some of them come with a shot of the tables, people sitting around the table. We had our chief conservation officer was sitting at that table, and he let me know. I said, hey, Mark, I'm going to be there. This is going to happen. And we definitely support that bill because it promotes and plugs and pushes public access, not just for hunting, but for anybody. Yeah. And so, yeah, we definitely are involved, and we're involved there, and we'll try and help push that across the finish line. And one reason that that's an attractive bill is it doesn't allow the selling off of public lands in huge chunks. Now, there are laws in place where they can sell small things that are kind of, I don't want to call them crummy chunks of land, but they don't really have great habitat and that kind of thing. And so they will sell those off. And that's fine because it doesn't really affect anything. But this keeps that from happening on a grand scale. And at the same time, this bill is being pushed out by Representative Zinke, who's Republican, and a representative, I think his name is Vasquez, from New Mexico, who's a Democrat. So this is a bipartisan bill. And in this day and age, bipartisan, if we can push bipartisan things forward that have a positive impact, let's do it.
Yeah, and something that I've seen with that is there, especially in Montana, those chunks of land that are landlocked. That's something that I know you guys have been working on in the state, but here in Colorado, again, we've got some lands that have been swapped. And so they're not necessarily sold off, but they're doing swaps to kind of make an area more continuous. And that way the private land isn't like this random chunk in the middle of the habitat. And so I'm excited about this bill. When I saw that press release about the press conference, I thought that was pretty neat that Zinke had introduced that along with Vasquez. And are you seeing any other key legislation that's going on that might benefit wildlife, or are you seeing a little of both?
It goes both ways. You know, the legislation that benefits, we obviously back. I know there's a piece in Nebraska right now where lawmakers are basically wanting to come in and raid dollars that are generated through the sale of hunting licenses and Pittman-Robertson Act funding. And that's super scary and dangerous. If this one particular bill is pushed through and passes, then exactly that will happen. They will raid that fund, and because of the stipulations that are in place with Pittman-Robertson, those dollars won't go to Nebraska. And states receive millions of dollars every year from the Pittman-Robertson Act for land conservation, public access, and all those sorts of things. And so as soon as we caught word of that, we sent a note out to, not just our members in Nebraska, but did some digital media posts and that saying, hey, if you're from Nebraska, if you know anyone from Nebraska, this is going on, click here, have your folks who live there notify their lawmakers and say this is a dangerous thing. We have another one that's going on in Washington right now where they want to push through some bills that put heavy-handed regulations on small sporting good organizations that serve as FFLs, or in other words, those who, if you want to get a license or you want to buy a new rifle, you have to go in, you have to fill out all the paperwork. It's a lot of these mom and pop shops in Washington that take care of that paperwork to push through the purchase of a rifle if you're going to upgrade your own or get one for one of your kids or whatever. And so it would also jeopardize our ability as an organization, as a hunting-based conservation group, and others, to be able to auction off or raffle rifles at some of our banquets, that sort of thing. And so this would jeopardize some conservation funding, or the ability to generate conservation funding in Washington. And like Colorado, we have a large membership in Washington, for example. And so we let people know that, hey, please speak up, let your representatives know that this isn't a good thing, please oppose it. So there's good things, there's bad things, and we just try to stay active on all fronts.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you would think that something that is gun related like that wouldn't really affect Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and the work that you do, but it's interesting to hear you say how that would affect the fundraising, because that's something that I don't think everybody considers when they see these things come up, is how it kind of trickles out into other avenues. And so thank you for mentioning that. I think it's
right, and it's one thing to use a firearm to raise funding. We're not just saying, drawing a name and they come up and get the rifle and run out the building with it. I mean, they get the ability to fill out the paperwork, go to the FFL dealers, to work through them, to push everything through, to do it the right way. But then that right way, it seems like right now there's some folks who don't want that to happen.
Right. And I think that's another area where there's a little misunderstanding in the process and how that goes. I mean, you just explained it to us. It's not like we're just giving any random person a firearm at any fundraising events. There's a process that has to be done. And I know actually even some of my family members that don't understand that. They think anybody can just go grab a firearm and it's yours. So that it's an interesting dynamic. And something that I try to do with the podcast and a lot of the speaking events and everything else I do is try to educate the non-hunters and people that don't own firearms, educate them about the process and how it works, because there's a lot of process to that.
Yeah, there's so many layers. I got my son, I got him a new big game rifle several years ago, and yeah, I mean, I had to put my name, my social security number, my information. They had to take it. It took a couple of weeks, or maybe I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it's not an instantaneous process. I mean, there's safeguards that are in place to see that things are done the right way, and that's what we're talking about here, and that's what's being threatened in Washington.
Right. And so speaking of that, your family and your son, I mean, we can talk about Rocky Mountain Elk all day long, but I had looked at, you filled out a questionnaire to come on the show. I always have people kind of give me some information so that I can learn more about you, which is one of the goals of having you on the show. In there, you said that you like hunting, fly fishing, hiking, and then you mentioned mountain unicycling. Can you tell us about the unicycling?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's true. When I was a kid, my brother got a unicycle, a little 24-inch wheel, and then he upgraded to a 36-inch wheel. So the 24-inch wheel was sitting there, and I was 12, and I'm like, let's figure out how to ride this thing. So anyway, then I rode it, and I outgrew it, and then my younger sister, she started to ride it. But these are regular old-school Schwinn unicycles. Fast forward to a number of years later, and my son, I have two of my kids, my son and my daughter, both picked up unicycling, and he was out in the garage on my old throwback 36-inch Schwinn unicycle and rode it off the landing and dropped about 3 feet and landed. And as he did so, he totally bent the pedals and bent the frame. And so I'm like, what are you doing? You've ruined my unicycle. I've had it for decades. You know, I was a 45-year-old man at that point or whatever. We went online and we found a new unicycle in Madison, Wisconsin. Go figure. I just sent a note out on Facebook and found out that I had a friend who had a friend in Madison who went and picked it up, paid for it, boxed it, sent it to me. When it got there, it had big old knobby tires. I'm like, wow, this thing is slick. And that's when I realized that they had a mountain unicycle version of a mountain bike. So it's the same kind of thing. It's a bigger wheel, big and knobby, a little more bouncy. And so then we got my son, he got a new one. And then my daughter got one online in Spokane. Again, had friends over in Spokane who went and purchased it and sent it to us. And then we would go out and ride mountain trails. So when people go out and they're hiking trails with their dogs and their poles, here come this guy and two of his kids shooting down with mountain unicycles. Their unicycles are flying and they're hitting rocks and that sort of thing. So they're both since married and moved out. But we've gone on mountain unicycle backpacking trips. We put our packs on and we pedal up in the mountains and we put our tent out and we sleep for the night and pick huckleberries and cook hot dogs on the fire and that kind of stuff. And then we've actually have a couple videos that we made that went viral-ish back in the day that were kind of fun too. So it's just a fun thing. At one point I had 7 unicycles hanging on my garage wall, including 2 giraffes, or in other words, 6-footers, those really tall ones that people ride. And so it's just a thing that's been passed on in my family. And then a couple of years ago, I got a small unicycle for my grandson. Now, he hasn't mastered it yet, but my hope is that the next generation will pick it up.
I think that's awesome. And so to learn how to ride a unicycle, maybe we need to have you guys do a camp and teach us how to do that or something. I actually have a friend here locally that she rides unicycles too, but nice. she's like an anomaly, and I'm thinking you guys are like anomalies as well, because how do you go about learning?
You just get on and go. My brother got on and he would pedal and fall and pedal and fall and pedal and fall. But in the back of our garage, again, this is when I was a kid, we had a set of old golf clubs. And so I would take the old driver and the 3-wood and I would hold the heads of those. And I would, once I got my balance kind of down, I could go a little bit, but that helped me. And then I also didn't destroy my seat as much. My brother had to get a whole new seat cover because his was ravaged. But it's just like anything else. If you want to become a better hunter, you learn, but then you actually have to go out and do it. And so this is the same thing. You just have to go and learn. And in this case, find a wall that you could go along the side of and stay away from mom and dad's car and don't scratch it up. and that sort of thing. And then you just pick it up, and then it becomes like, hey, just like riding a bike, riding a unicycle.
I love it. You guys, I'm thinking you must have huge core strength to have the balance to ride a unicycle.
Well, it helps. It helps. There's so for my son's, I can't remember what birthday it was, 16, 17 birthday, there's a small ski resort that's just above town up here. And so we took our unicycles out and took our video camera, and we rode the ski lift to the top and rode the 5.5 miles down, and took a video, and that was actually picked up by unicycle.com. That's like the big dealer of unicycles. And they put that on their Facebook page for several years. But the funny thing about that was the next day we were at church, and we were sitting in a meeting, and he was across the way. This was after the main worship service, kind of like a Sunday school. And I look over at him, and he's sitting down like this. He's going, and I did the exact same thing, and our thighs were so sore. Even though we rode a lot, we didn't ride like that, because even though you can get unicycles now that have brakes on them and gears on them, which I don't have, we didn't. And so when you're going downhill, you're using your legs to stop yourself the whole time. And so we were super sore for 3 days. But hey, it was a lot of fun. And for a father, what better memory can you have with a kid than doing something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And talk about mountain tough or mountain fitness. Like, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you also mentioned that you like fly fishing. And I mean, when you think of Montana, I think of fly fishing. What are some of your favorite places to go fly fishing?
You know, I'm the kind of guy that likes a small creek. And I fished the bigger rivers and caught some nice fish and all that. But I love going out on a hot August day and wearing shorts and a vest and just my boots, and getting out there early in the morning and having a stream that I can navigate. I go back and forth and cross to fish this bank or that hole or that sort of thing. That's what I really enjoy. To me, it's religious like. I mean, being out there, God's creations, just all you hear is the water, and having opportunities to catch some fish, and then occasionally seeing some otters or beavers, or I've seen moose and elk and black bears as I fished as well. And so that just, to me, that's what it's all about, is being out there. And I had a friend who knows how to tie flies and taught me how to tie flies. And so that's what I do is tie my own flies. And as soon as it gets warm out, I'm out.
Warm out and out there and exploring the world. I love it. When you mention that, I'm wondering, I've always known you as being in Montana. Did Rocky Mountain Elk bring you to Montana, or were you already there? How did you come to Montana? Are you a native?
So I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. And then we moved to Wichita, Kansas. My dad was a petroleum geologist. We were transferred to Calgary, Alberta for 3 years, and then back to Kansas. I got to Montana because of my previous job. My first job, I was a sportscaster in Topeka, Kansas, and then again in Spokane, Washington. And then I got out of sports and became a newscaster and anchor and reporter, and kind of specializing on environment and outdoors, that sort of thing. That's what brought me to Montana, is when I became a newscaster, I moved from Washington to Montana. And I did that for a decade here and really enjoyed it. And so just happened to be sitting at the table one day and looking at the newspaper back in the days when we all took the newspaper, and saw a little bitty ad, that the RMEF logo and PR director advertising. I was like, that would be sweet. How cool would that be? And one thing led to another, and here I am.
Yeah. Were you already a hunter then, or what attracted you to the Rocky Mountain Elk part?
My parents were actually, they grew up in southern Utah, and they both hunted and fished. And so I did a lot of fishing, but not big game hunting. The only time I ever went out with my dad was when we lived in Calgary, and he got a license up there, and we were after deer, which of course means we ran right into a moose, so close I could have hit it with a snowball. But that was the only time I was really exposed to it. So it wasn't until we moved from Spokane to Montana that I was out at church one day, and all these guys were out there mingling in the foyer, like with their phones out. I'm like, what's going on? And they were sharing their hunting pictures and successes and things they saw or non-successes. And so I went to my son. I'm like, we need to figure out how to do this hunting thing. And he was about 9 or 10 at the time. And so we started going out with friends and then by ourselves. And over the years, he's taken some elk and I've taken elk. And between the two of us, we've shot a lot of deer and just had a lot of fun together. And so I'm kind of a late in life, self-taught hunter. I don't think I'm a great hunter. I'm kind of like a guy who works for a professional baseball team. I work there, but doesn't mean I'm a great baseball player. So I work at RMEF, doesn't mean I'm a great hunter. I have had some success. But like anyone else, I just love getting outside and giving it a go.
Yeah, and as you've mentioned several times, it sounds to me that you love God's creation, and that's partly why you do everything you do. And I really admire that a lot.
Yeah, there's just been so many opportunities. I mean, you know how it is, especially when you get out and you hike an hour in the dark and get to the top of the mountain. And when you're up there and then the world starts to wake up and the birds come alive and the squirrels are out and then you can see all sorts of wildlife that doesn't see you. That's what I get a big kick out of, is when you're out there and you see them and they don't see you. I remember one time I was bow hunting for deer in a river bottom, and I was sitting there in the dark, and as it got lighter, I was leaning up against a trunk of a tree, and then this bird comes, one of these little tiny birds with the long beaks, lands like right there, and I'm just like, it was stuff like that. So cool, so cool. And if I weren't out hunting, I'm not sure I would have an experience like that.
Right. And I've told that to a lot of non-hunters, because I think as hunters, you kind of see the world differently than if you're hiking or just, taking a walk out in the woods. You see nature differently and you interact with nature differently while you're hunting. So it's an amazing experience. And I don't
feel
think,
like,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
Rather than having a third person experience where, look at this, I feel like I'm in it. And it's just, I'm not sure how to describe that. It's an all-in whole type of feeling, as opposed to driving down the road and looking off and seeing an animal running or a nice lake or look at that fishing hole or that sort of thing. But when you're out there and you're in it, it's just a completely different experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think with it being winter, I'm ready to get out and experience that. I mean, we've been out doing hunts during the winter. I do a lot of mentoring, and it's just the springtime and turkey hunting coming up, and then summertime fly fishing and all of that. I'm really looking forward to that. It sounds like you're ready to get out there in warm weather fly fishing as well.
Absolutely.
Do you have any big adventures planned this summer?
No, not really. I mean, we have some family outings and that sort of thing. One of the things that my wife and I like to do that we picked up a couple of years ago is paddleboarding. And the Clark Fork River flows right through our little community west of Missoula where we live. And we have we can either go 7 miles or 12 miles. And so we like to, get a lunch and put it in a backpack and then just paddle along and do nothing and look for osprey and bald eagles and deer, or lay on our back and take a nap before you crash into the side of the bank or just whatever. That's the kind of thing we like to do. And then, picking huckleberries is another big thing that we like to do. And can't beat huckleberries. They're the best. So those are, I guess, just periodic things that we have planned, but no grand adventures. I did notice online earlier today, I checked in on when the deadlines are to put in for elk tags. And so that will definitely be on my calendar as well.
Definitely. So will you have any training that you do to get in shape, or it sounds like everything you do is you're going to be fit all the time? I mean, you're unicycling, paddleboarding, again, that's balance, and you're using like every muscle in your body, even though it's relaxing. Like, do you have any specific things you do to get ready for hunting?
I really don't. I play softball. I play basketball, whatever. I'm just an old guy who's nearing the end of his active life, who doesn't want that active life to end. So I will continue to do what I can to not let that happen. That's my goal, and
Yeah.
that's my in shape goal, I guess, as well.
I guess that's the best way to stay young is to stay active. I mean, that's kind of what I've seen with people who are my father-in-law is 90, he just turned 93, I believe, last week. And stay active and you can keep going. So it sounds like you're well on your way to, I mean, not saying that you're old, but I'm just saying you are fit, it sounds like.
I'm hanging in there, doing the best I can. It also helps to have family close by. I was out with my daughter and her husband and 3 of my grandkids skiing last weekend. So it also helps to really have family close by, as you know. I mean, it just keeps you going.
Yeah, definitely does. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of your personal life. It's nice to get to know you a little more and to share some of the adventures and outdoor stuff that you do, because it seems like being in the hunting realm, we always focus on hunting, but you've shared a lot more than hunting, and I love it. I wanted to kind of circle back to Rocky Mountain Elk. When we went up there to visit Leah when she was doing the internship, and we visited her at school, obviously, but I was amazed, and I highly recommend all the time when people go to Montana. I was amazed by the museum there at the facility. Can you tell us a little bit about the museum and some of the highlights that are in there?
Yeah, so our visitor center is open every day during every weekday, that is. And it's kind of, it's actually changed since you've been there, too. But there's one half that's retail, and then there's one half that's educational, I guess you'd say. And so we have a number of partners who don't necessarily have storefronts, who are selling out of there, like Loophole and Montana Knife Company and several others that set up shop in there. But at the same time, we have some interactive displays where people can watch videos, they can touch screens, they can feel pelts, they can pick up antlers, all those sorts of things. We have a hall that's full of massive elk racks, something that I would only ever dream of seeing or hanging in my house. And then just kind of a short summary beneath each one that talks about where they're from and how they came to be. We have some interactive displays, one of which is Outdoor Class, which is a video subscription service that we have that involves folks like Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson, Corey being a 10-time world elk calling champ, and John Barklow, who's a backcountry survival expert. And so Remy Warren's another who talks a lot about mule deer. And so you can come in and actually, even though you have to have a subscription to see those modules to learn from them, you can come in and we have it set up right there. So if you're there, you can go hit some and watch, and they'll talk and take you out to how to find and how to call and how to do this and how to glass and how to do that and those sorts of things. So there's some interactive displays as well. And it is one of the go-to places in Missoula, which is really cool. We have just during school year buses and buses full of kids come in, and then we send them out with those little cardboard elk antler hats that they wear, and they're out there in the parking lot doing this thing and that and the other. But it's a great place to come, and I'd encourage anybody who's close just to swing by and spend a morning or an afternoon here and check it out.
Absolutely. And then there's one other thing that I wanted you to share with us. Coming up May 3rd and 4th, you guys have something happening. Can you tell us a little bit about the anniversary?
Yeah, so the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation was founded on May 14th, 1984. And we're 2024, so we're talking 40 years now. We're just shy of our 40th anniversary. We are going to have several celebrations that weekend that we'll have folks from all over the country coming in and just hanging out. It'll be like a grand reunion is what it'll be like. There's so many people that have done so many great things and actually meet around the country, and they've met and become friends through this. But we have a number of activities that are set up. You can go to our website, rmef.org, and check that out. I will say to the public, it's limited because our space is limited and where we're having celebrations. So it's not like we can, I guess we could have rented out the football stadium maybe and said, hey, everybody come. But but we do have some limitations there. But it'll be a great opportunity for us to stop for a minute and realize where we've been. That we started out in a double wide trailer in the middle of a field in northwest Montana, and now we have this big, beautiful facility. And at the same time, to recognize our volunteers and so many others who do so much to advance our mission for elk and elk country. And so we're really looking forward to that.
Excellent. I'm thinking, how can I add that to my calendar? But if it's limited, then maybe there are more significant people than myself that probably should be there. But I'm super excited, and I'm glad that you guys are having such huge success. One last question, and maybe I'm going to put you on the spot, but I doubt it because you know so much. Can you tell us one fun fact about elk that maybe people don't always think of?
Well, a personal fact for me is they go down their holes when I hunt them because I can't seem to find them. Wow, a fun fact. Yeah, here's one. According to official sources, official wildlife sources, what is a group of elk called?
So I would call a group of elk a herd.
Okay. It's actually officially a gang.
A gang. And you know what? Yeah, I'm going to totally, Leah's going to kill me if she listens to the episode because she has told me that before. And so earlier I had a gang of elk circling in the pasture up here.
There you go. I mean, there's some crazy ones. Isn't it like a murder of crows? Is that what it is?
Yes.
So there's a lot of funky names. I mean, we all call them herds. Everybody does. But when I came across that the first time, I was like, what? Is that so? And I went online, and there's actually real credible sources that said that. And I was like, okay.
Okay, if you say so.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing the information about the anniversary and links where people can follow you. Are there any other places that you want to let people know about to find Rocky Mountain elk?
I would say just go to our website, rmef.org. Of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and on YouTube as well. But we always would love to have people learn more about us. If they would like to join, that's awesome. If they don't, that's fine. We have different membership levels. If they want to, pay more, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine. The other thing I would say is for our banquets that take place, which are throughout Colorado and scattered around the country, there's a great opportunity there to walk in with, if you're pro-conservation, if you like hunting, if you like fishing, if you like the outdoors, you can walk into a group or into a room of several hundred, or depending on the banquet, up to 1,000 people that think like you do. That's a good opportunity to go, get a good meal, meet some folks. Perhaps you want to put in for some of the auctions, the silent auctions or the live auctions, and just have an evening of fun. And at the same time, realizing that while you're there, the money that you pay to get in, to get tickets, or for any of the auctions, goes to ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. So I just say try it, check it out.
Absolutely. I've been talking recently about building communities, and going to those events is a perfect place to build communities and also find people who can help you with maybe questions you have or help you get involved if you're needing to learn or anything like that. So thank you. I appreciate that so much.
You bet.
You bet. And thank you for joining us today. I look forward to my next Bugle magazine. I think of you and the crew every time I get the magazines in the mail. So
let me show this one.
I'm probably not the only one.
This was our January, February that kicked off the year. And so if you pull out of the front cover, you can see the front of every Bugle magazine that we've ever had for 40 years.
Wow.
So,
super cool. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, we will be honoring our 40th anniversary all year long in Bugle magazine.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time and you sharing some of Rocky Mountain elk and your personal story.
Thank you, Mia.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.